Good evening, Co-Operatives readers. I'm not even going to do this shit. This is episode 7. You know what? I don't even count at this point because so many of them don't even work out, really. It's the numbers. Let's save the numbers for smart people.
They're like the lost episodes.
They are. Yeah. They're the lost episodes that we didn't record because they were so goddamn bad. So let's just go ahead and call it. This is the 2012 Halloween episode.
I agree with that because I wore my most Halloween shirt, my Wicker Man Iron Maiden shirt.
Yep.
And if you're not familiar with that, it's a horror movie that was remade by Nick Cage. And
Awful.
the Nick Cage version is just so good.
Nicolas Cage, everything he touches is gold.
It's like sweet berry wine.
Sweet berry wine.
Right in your mouth.
So anyways, the topic... Shut up.
Go ahead.
The topic for the night is... well, we're going to talk about horror games because I think that a big contingent of what I like, I mean, from books to movies to games to music to everything in between is kind of horror based. That's my raison d'être, as the French would say. It's the thing that I like, and I like it a lot, and it's what got me into gaming as a whole. So, without further ado, coming back for her second time on the mic, we have the lovely zombie unicorn, Miss Domo.
Hi.
Back from his lengthy hiatus where he was giving out AIDS vaccines in Dubai is Johnny Thin.
You don't want to listen.
Of course we do. We want to hear about your Dubai adventures. Your rape gate. So, that being said, everything that you dig has metamorphosized into some like Kafka-esque horror. If you
don't mention Kafka.
Yeah,
that's
roaches.
Horror.
That's true. And if you look at it, things that you saw as a child that maybe were innocuous, if you look at it now as an adult, but there was shit that shook you to your very core, and that you can probably still recall this day. If you close your eyes and think of one of the most horrific things you remember from your childhood, I don't think you're going to have to reach back that far. I think it's fairly salient at the top of your brain, yes?
Yeah, pretty much.
And for me, horror games were, Silent Hill and Resident Evil, and way before those days, I had a Windows, probably 3.1 computer, back before there were even sound cards, and my dad had brought home a tie-in title. And if you guys read our articles, you know how I feel. And do you guys feel about tie-in titles about the same?
Yeah. Unless it's Pixar, I'm not touching it.
There is something in your childhood, something innocuous, something stupid, that kind of is a wedge in your paw, that's a needle in your arm, that's that Lego brick that you didn't pick up, that you step on.
Thorn in your paw.
In the pitch black. No, let's call it a Lego brick, because everybody stepped on a fucking Lego brick. I haven't gotten a thorn in my paw since I had
that jug.
Juggo Legos.
But wait, it had a handle, but the top also made it look like a huge Lego.
Okay.
She knows what I'm talking about.
And
you put all your Legos in there.
You never put all of your Legos.
No, because there'd always be that one.
Yeah, well, there's outside. The set. That was your prize shit. And then, the other ones that were like, the 55 brick sets.
The ho-hums?
That your parents would buy you to make you stop crying about stuff.
The appeasement toys.
Exactly.
Yes.
Those would all go into the thing that looked like a gigantic Lego brick.
Right, but what I'm getting at is no matter how hard you combed the carpet, there'd always be that one motherfucker, and it was never a rounded Lego head. It was never
so sharp.
Yep, exactly. It was always that it was either that tiny rectangular 2-dot one, or it was that 4-dot motherfucker where you don't know how you missed it.
It's perfectly square.
And you step it, and the worst part is when you step on it, you go, ow, and it's the instep, but then you roll your arch forward, and so it rolls with it. Just imagine that. Just take that all in, listeners. Take that all in, because you've all been there.
And just once in a while, it would make your foot cramp up.
Yep.
Because it rolled just right, and then you'd hit the ground, and you'd be like, God, why?
So that image, that visual, that's what I'm talking about with certain video games. And there were, when I had a PC, my dad had brought home, when I said licensed titles, he brought home Ghostbusters 2. Innocuous. It's Ghostbusters. It's what all kids love, okay? And I remember we installed it, and it was on a 3.5 disc. It was on like 4 3.5 discs. And we installed that shit, and my dad left the room. And you started playing it, and this is before sound cards. So everything was generated by the PC speaker. So it was like, when you're playing, and you know, and you shoot your Ghostbuster beam, and it goes, there's nothing. Like, there's nothing creepy about it. So I'm playing Ghostbusters 2, and I'm like digging around in the slime trying to find a sample. You guys have seen the movies, you know how it goes, and it's awful. And but you know, back in the day, that was the hot shit. Then they find the Vigo picture, and from the fucking computer speaker that was, and I said it was by my head, but I was wrong. It was under the desk. The disembodied voice says, "I, Vigo, the Scourge of Carpathia." When you've never heard a voice come from your computer in your life, this is before dial-up internet. This is before internet, okay? A voice came from the machine that makes blip-blop, bloopity-bloops all the time. A voice with actual words came out and scared the shit out of me.
Well, the voices were really creepy when they were made out of that type of shit.
Like,
I have this crappy Game Boy Color game where it makes me jump every time. It's called Chrysalis. It's like kind of like a Zelda knockoff. And I remember the first time the voice came out, I was like, whoa, what was that?
Because it's only that disembodies plink plink. What were you saying, Johnny?
Yeah, well, you get like this weird popping, and it's barely a recognizable human voice, but it's obviously generated from an original human act.
Which is, it's kind of that Ghost in the Machine thing, where you don't ever expect a human or a facsimile of a human voice to come through it. And see, let me paint you guys a picture. I grew up on the East Coast in a thriving burg called Syracuse, and we had a big enough house where it was a 3 or 4 bedroom house, but there was a back bedroom, the guest bedroom, and there was a big long hallway that led to that back bedroom, and that's where that was my dad's work office. So if my parents were downstairs in the living room and some rape monster named Vigo came out of my computer and, I don't know, stretched my asshole and gouged my eyes out, and my parents would probably barely hear me in the living room. So when I hear this voice, I lose my shit, hit the ground running, and would not go back in that room. And I was probably, I don't know, 11, maybe? And that game ruined my shit. And that wasn't even a true horror game. The real horror came when my dad bought me he bought me a Voodoo 3 video card, which dates me as being super old. And he got me Resident Evil 1. Okay, this is the first time I could play, like, grown-up normal games. And I bought Resident Evil 1 because it was an electronics boutique before GameStop bought those motherfuckers.
I remember those.
Yep.
Neon purple sign that made it look like a strip club for games.
Oh, yeah. slutty games.
EB Games.
So I got this game because it was, I want to say it was like $12 on sale, which back in the day was a lot of money for me because, you know, being a broco or, you know, having to work for all your shit is really what it was. And I played Resident Evil, and, you know, you see the zombie and that kabukis you out and, you know, whatever. But this was the first time of actually playing a true horror game where I got scared and kicked the chair out and fell backwards and landed on my ass was when the dogs jumped through the window. The first time you hit that hallway.
Yeah. I think everybody remembers that. I mean, that's like...
Bring it back for people that haven't.
So... First, here's my big thing. The dogs definitely scared me, but leading up to the dogs...
Zombie dogs.
They're zombie dogs. There's a room with a grandfather clock, and it is just ticking. There's no other music going on. The entire time as you're investigating this creepy mansion, you know there's zombies. I mean, it's called Resident Evil. There's zombies on the cover, but you just hear this ticking, 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 and you go into this long hallway, and there's stained glass windows all the way across, and the second you, like, set foot in front of a window, all these dogs just crash through the windows, and you were just like, what the hell? Because prior to that, I mean, you have a couple slow-moving zombies, incessant ticking, and you're just kind of exploring mansion, and at that point, I know I was like, oh, this is kind of fucking boring. Like, what the hell they got me? So I'm like, I thought my dad liked action games. All right, well, I guess this works out. You know, I'm playing my dad's games. And that just, like, I remember, I was just like, what the fuck? Just terrified because you didn't see it coming. Because there's no, like, oh, I see it running at me from the end of the hall. It just, everything crashed through. And I booked it backwards. I'm like, fuck that. I'm not going any farther. I'm going to go explore the ticking room. Like, I thought the clock was the scary part.
And you said the clock was horrible, but I mean, the kind of the keystone of Resident Evil games was the pacing.
Yeah.
And they would have that time, that clicking, that, you know, your time is running out. You know, it didn't have to say it, but it said it, you know, without having to say it.
You knew something was coming. When
you had to open a fucking door and it took 45 seconds to open a door, like, it would be, God. You would click on it, picture of a door, the doorknob turning, door opening, the creaky thing, and then it was a loading screen.
Yeah. And something may or may not be on the other side of that, and you don't know if you're going to rush backwards. I'm a big fan of the backtracking when I'm scared.
This is fucking brilliant, in my opinion.
Well, what was your first, Johnny?
Well, you know, I gotta kind of take you in between Mick and in between Domo for that. You know,
it's a good place to be, by the way. Very sexy place to be.
It's like a sandwich with 2 pieces of bread on the bottom.
Enjoy it.
But anyways,
spread. Go ahead.
I had a Sega Genesis growing up. It's the first system I remember playing, the first game system I can remember having, as far as I know. You know, we got Splatterhouse 2. It wasn't even the first Splatterhouse. But
a great sequel. I mean, it's such a dynamic franchise.
Well, I mean, if you're familiar with it, it's just pure visceral. You know, it's
not visceral. It's viscera. It's just gore and brains.
And you know, it's earlier I likened it to the Jason Voorhees because that's really what it is. It's just fucking tits and slaughter, and that's all that it ever was.
That's all anyone ever needs.
Exactly. You know, it's like from a survival or from a horror game in general, it appeals to the lowest common denominator. And that's exactly what all the Splatterhouse games have always been, up until the most current iteration of it, which is amazing, but I'd like to think it wasn't successful because people have grown beyond that, but it's probably not true.
No, hold on a second, because I actually reviewed that game. They sent me a copy of it, and I think that, like a lot of games that come out, it's truly a labor of love. But when it finally materializes, because you know it's been on the back burner for like 7 years minimum, right? So when it finally hits the light of day, it looks like a 3-year-old game.
Well,
because they've been working on it for 7 years.
It does somewhat suffer from Duke Nukem syndrome.
Well, hold on. No, hold on. You just gave it AIDS, okay? Duke Nukem is the worst game that's come out. It's the worst cock tease. It's the Keanu Reeves. No, fuck that. It's the Nicolas Cage of shitty cock tease games.
Because at least Keanu Reeves still looks pretty.
Yeah, it's no. I was rereading my review, which by the way, on the Co-Operatives review archive, you can go ahead and read my awesome Duke Nukem Forever review. It is awful. It is one of the worst games that's ever been made under the auspices of being a great game. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, you know, it doesn't quite suffer that to the severity of Duke Nukem. You know, because Duke Nukem was first released on the PC as an amazing PC game. Then was released on the 64, was the most amazing 64 game at the time. You know,
2 years after or like a year after the
Yeah, you know, they edited out a lot of stuff.
They had
but
to,
even still, it was way crazier than anything you've ever played on the 64. Like,
True.
Up until then, you're shooting shit with lasers as an X-Wing.
I don't know. I remember playing Duke Nukem in my dad's office.
That's on the PC.
Yeah,
they had it on all their PCs in the office. They did do work, but like when I would show up, I was like, God, I think I was like 6 or 7. I remember how pissed my mom would be. It was just like, she was playing what? And I was just like, I'm fine, I'm cool.
Because there's tits in it.
Yeah, and I remember my dad was always like, "Don't talk about that." Like, just
they're barely poorly.
These are not the conflict shows.
Exactly, you saw no boobs in that. Yeah. Continue your game, Dominique.
Yeah, and I mean that's essentially what happened to Splatterhouse for me, and I think that personally for me, because I have Splatterhouse, maybe like Duke Nukem Forever, but probably not, was very much...
It was better.
It was, it's a labor of love. It's for
Sure.
people who played through the first 3, have very fond memories of them, and then play through this one, because that's all that I wanted, All I wanted is something where I'm just killing random monsters, and then I get a picture of video game tits. And that's awesome. But that's it.
It delivers on what you're expecting. I want to see boobs and I want to kill lots of monsters. But was it? I never played any of them. But was it actually scary, the original ones? Were you scared of the monsters, or was it more just haha, fuck you, bitch, and then you killed it?
Never.
So it was almost like a fun house compared to.
Sure. Oh
rather
yeah,
than a haunted house, it's a fun house type thing.
You can get the original Splatterhouse on the Wii Shop channel and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's if I look back on it, I'm like, wow, I was a fucked up kid. I must have been, because I'm hitting babies with a pipe.
Right.
But it's now if I look back on it, the first game that I really remember scaring me is probably Resident Evil 2. So I fucking skip over 1 altogether personally. And it's
you're a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a baby, man.
And Resident Evil 2 had all the staples of a true horror movie, and it kind of juxtaposed it into a game. And, I remember it specifically, I played through most of it at a buddy's house, and we were up till 2 in the morning, which was fucking crazy.
Yeah, not allowed.
Yeah, when you're 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my friend Jose for me. We got all the M-rated games. We stayed up till dawn playing them.
Whoa. My mom's gonna be so pissed at me.
Oh, yeah.
Just don't tell her. Just don't tell her.
Yeah.
Bro, just be cool.
Be
We went to bed at 10.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, then we stay up till 1, and then my mom comes home, and she finds out we're still playing games. And then my buddy turned off his TV, but left his PlayStation
Oh, yeah,
on.
that trick. Yeah. We just throw the covers on us, pretend that we fell asleep playing the game.
Wait.
Yeah.
But I'm the nerd who turned off the PlayStation. I'm like, but this is still on.
Oh, because the light
You were
was
trying to
lit.
hit, you were just dotting all the Eyes. You're covering the bases.
You're a
sure.
shitty completionist.
Oh, but
Yeah,
this
you
is
are.
still on.
Yep.
And I turned it off. He's like, what the fuck did you just do? We didn't even reach a typewriter.
Oh,
What?
you bastard.
But yeah.
You had no ink cartridges.
Okay, so let me bring it back. If any of you guys are dear, sweet, prepubescent, just darling youngins, back in the day, which I mean, this is in the midlife of my gaming, because back in my day with the Nintendo cartridges, you used to have to write down a code to figure out where you saved. And the worst part was Castlevania. You would get to level 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10. Who even gives a shit? I don't even know. But you would get to it, and it would give you.
I got a good analogy.
What's that?
Imagine you're entering a code for 1,600 Xbox Live points, so you can buy the next piece of DLC.
Yeah.
But you're doing that just to get back to your game save.
It's no, but even that's letters and numbers and shit. See, you don't understand. With Castlevania, it was like a whip, which was a D shape, with a star and a heart and a morning star and a vial of holy water. That was your save thing, but it was I want to say it was 5 characters long.
That's horrible.
But if you were doing it late at night when you weren't supposed to be playing games, you look at it the next day and it looks like Michael J. Fox was writing out your grocery order. It's just scribbles and wiggles and shit. Is that the holy water, is that a whip? And you know what? Hold on. I can make that joke because I apparently have either early stages Parkinson's or severe muscle tremors, according to my doctor. So just so you don't think I'm a heartless bastard, which truly I am. But if I was to do that, but you don't know that, but you know that now. But so, what we're saying is the fucking typewriters in Resident Evil, it wasn't even that you found the typewriter that was amazing, that you could save your game in the typewriter. It's you had to have the typewriter
the goddamn ink.
The little ink cartridges.
So you might find a save point, but you wouldn't be able to use it. So it was
that shit took up 2 squares in your inventory.
Yep.
Remember that shit? It was so frustrating.
So you would try to you would hit a room that had 19 green herbs or herbs. What am I, British? And but you would have a room that would have all these herbs, and you're like, shit, I have room. I can either have 3 typewriter tapes or 9 herbs, and you're like, well, I'm gonna need to save my game at some point, so let's just take 2 herbs, and then you eat shit.
I find a blue and a red.
Yeah.
If
But
I find a blue and a red, what am I gonna combine those?
right, to make a super.
I need a
super
super
health?
herb. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I never
But-
know when I'm gonna need these green herbs.
But so that being said, is like you would, and and they'd have the boxes where you could store shit and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like even that, like it wasn't that you survived enough to hit the typewriter. It's you had to have the adequate parts, which is tantamount to being in a zombie apocalypse
Yeah.
and like seeing a Mustang. Seeing your Mustang out in the parking lot and zombies are chasing after you and you run up there, you're like, oh, I don't have my keys.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just go fuck myself.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
that's,
yeah, except even worse, because you're like, well, I fucking hotwire. Oh, I was out of gas that day?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
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 Oh, yeah,
The
my
day
keys
before
were tied to the
payday.
gas tank. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Day before
Or-
payday, and I
or-
had no gas.
You could do the walk of shame in Resident Evil, which is running all the way back through all the scenes with no zombies because you killed them all
Right.
just because you just found a ribbon tape just to go back to the typewriter.
Because you
so
know where
could
that
save it.
typewriter is.
Right.
Yeah.
But even that, like that would take, what, like 15 minutes of real
Forever.
time?
because you'd be running through scenes and
Yeah.
have to deal with all the transitions.
Yeah,
Right.
loading
And the
screen,
door,
loading
and the
screen.
opening the door,
Yeah.
like we said
Yeah.
before. But that's, then that's kind of...
I never felt like I cleared the zombies, though. I would be, like, fucking huddled, like, oh my god, I go the whole way back, like,
The
someone's
fucking
gonna
birds,
catch me
dude.
between. Yeah.
I think Resident Evil 2, was it 2 or 3? It was 3 that started the random occurrences, where, like, you could walk by the same window 6 times, but, like, the 7th time you'd walk by it, like, ravens would blow out through it,
Yeah.
or, like, a liquor would pop out through, like, Resident Evil 3 was the first one that, to me, as a teenager playing it, brought back all of those childlike horrors, because there were parts in the game where Nemesis would just fucking appear. You would be in a room that you know is clear, that you know is sealed, that you know is, like, locked out from the other side, and you would pop through the door and Nemesis would be on the other side.
Yeah.
And would just grab you by the face and throw you. It was the very manifestation of, I think, the horror genre, which is where you're never safe.
Yeah.
Like, even with Resident Evil 1,
Yeah.
you could backtrack through the rooms that, and you
Yeah,
said that
I
you
think
were,
you
like,
cleared it.
looking out and scared,
Yeah.
and whatever. But still, like,
You knew that there wasn't going to be
Yeah.
anything there, even if you felt like there could be.
right.
Yeah.
And so that at least, that tiny part of you knew that you were safe enough to go through it and everything was fine. And I think that with something like, with Nemesis kind of turned that all on its head, because there would be times when you would walk by an area and, like, dogs would appear, or dogs would jump out, and that kind of brought it full circle back to the original Resident Evil. But this is something that I didn't even discuss with you prior to recording, and that's that there's a little game that came out. I don't know if you guys heard of it. It wasn't really that big, but it was this thing called Silent Hills. Am I saying that right? Silent Hills?
That sounds really familiar.
With a Z or something?
Yeah.
It's...
Yeah,
but-
Kiss of Death. Yeah,
Yeah.
anything with a Z. You take that back.
No. Silent Hill ruined my shit in worst ways even Nemesis ever could have, because Nemesis was the Michael Myers, he was the Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, I think that's it's a definite it's a definite, like,
Well, when
very,
you talk about horror games, it's one of those.
that's
it's the
you know,
staples.
it's because fucking, yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Like, Nemesis is definitely a staple because it's something you couldn't control, also you couldn't defeat, but you could avoid.
Right.
It's Michael Myers or it's Freddy Krueger. You could avoid Freddy Krueger by not going to sleep. You could avoid Michael Myers by running away from him. And the same thing with, Jason Voorhees.
Or not having
That's
sex the
what-
whole movie.
That's
yeah,
what
for doing drugs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Nemesis was, and incorporating that into a video game, in addition to having these, like, birds-like scares,
Yeah.
and things like that, where it's something you definitely never expected. I think it was a really important game, like 2 and 3, because you have stereotypical characters that aren't necessarily antagonistic from 2, and then you have stereotypical characters that are antagonistic from 3, and you kind of combine those, and you get a conglomeration of all previous really good horror movies.
Well, and that's kind of one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum, that Hitchcockian, that Lovecraftian, that Twilight Zonian, if you will, fear of the unknown, is exactly what Silent Hill capitalized on. Like,
Yeah.
Silent Hill, I mean, Resident Evil was, you know, it was monsters and da-da-da, but at the end of the day, I could be like, well, Nemesis isn't going to show up in my bedroom.
Yeah.
You know, and you're a teenager, so you're I'm too cool for that. You know, meanwhile, like, you do the, like, when you were a kid, did you ever do the thing where you pulled the covers over your head, but you cracked just that little enough to breathe through?
Yeah.
And you would, like, pop your mouth over it, and you're like...
you don't want to be breathing, like, your hot air.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. But then you make that little curve with your hand, that little tunnel that lets the air in. But meanwhile, if a tentacle slithers in there, you can slam your hand down.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Cool.
I'm
You're safe.
covered.
Yeah. What a game like Silent Hill did is Silent Hill turned all that shit on its head for me, because the idea of a big scary monster is, yeah, the big scary monster can show up at any point. Silent Hill with the radio, when you'd be walking through fog, which, I mean, I know it gets foggy in San Diego, but in winter with, like, whiteouts in New York, you know, and even with, like, fog conditions where I grew up, like, precipitation was a great deal heavier on the East Coast than it was out here. There were points where you'd be walking and you couldn't see 10 feet in front of you. And Silent Hill was that fear of the unknown. You would hear that radio turn on and blare static anytime a monster was near. Because there are parts in the game where the static comes on, like you open up a door, then you get in the room, the static goes on, you have your lantern, and you're swinging the light around, and it's those little, like, doughboy monsters that are like the ghosts of the kids that won't even hurt you. They're just kind of there to be there.
There to wig you out.
Right.
You're like, but what if that's not the only thing?
Exactly. And that's because it gives you that blare of static that kind of sets you on your ass.
You know, there's one that just fucked me up, and it's not even like doesn't like hit people's radar as being a really great game. Some shitty cameras, some shitty controls. Haunting Ground on PS2. You could feel.
It's the one with the dog, right?
It's the one with the dog, and you were the girl, and this one, because you're talking about, like, oh, that monster can never get me. This one, you're a 17-year-old girl, get in a car accident with your parents. You wake up in a basement full of blood, wearing nothing but a sheet, and there's, like, entrails all over. Sheet? Not really. They don't over-sexualize it.
Is it Capcom?
It's Capcom. It's Capcom. This is the one
and they
where
don't over-sexualize
They
it.
didn't over-sexualize it.
That's
I mean,
weird.
like, I guess it's a little bit there.
Right.
But, like, you go to the mansion and, like, everything's super fucking creepy, and you can feel her heartbeat in the controller. So I remember the first time, like, they give you clothes, kind of creepy scene with that, with you getting dressed. So that was a little sexual. They didn't really do it too much.
Right.
But, like, the first time you're like, oh, cool. An interaction point. There's some blood on a railing, you think, and you look at it, and you see the girl, like, stumble back. She's like, is that blood, right? Like, oh my god.
Right.
And, but her heart starts beating faster. You're like, what the fuck is this? This girl, you can get her so she'll have a panic attack and turn and run, and you can't control her. The only way you can deal with enemies in that is run away from them and hide. And if you use a hiding spot over and over again, they'll drag you out of it. So you're done with, like, throwing things at them, kicking them in the shins, hiding places. It was like that feeling of vulnerability and, oh my fucking god, that got me so hard. Still one of my favorite games. For horror games, I was like, everything was scary to you. And then,
Well, and
the worst part, it had traps of cutscenes where you really thought you got farther, and then it would just fucking kill you. It would, like, start up a cutscene, you're like, oh, sweet, and then it was like, Actus Fin, dead.
So when you said because I've never played it, I've seen it, definitely. Yeah. Because that was definitely in that, didn't, like, Haunting Ground and Rule of Rose
Yeah, Rule of Rose came out after Haunting Ground, except it was a little bit more weird with the crayon cord or whatever with the little girls. Yeah. And that kind of threw people because this, I guess, like, child molestation overtones or something. This one, you get Howie is your dog, and he's a white German Shepherd, and you save him, and that's the part that was really, I mean, like, it was a wrenching game, because you had Howie, and if she started panicking, you pet Howie, calm her down. But Howie would also growl if there was an enemy nearby, which the radio is kind of reminding me of, because he would growl if one of whoever's chasing you at the time was nearby. So you'd open a door and they might be right there, and you're like, oh my god, and you turn around and you thought that you were in a safe area of the mansion because you ran all the way to the other end of the mansion, right? And Howie, like, you would go in a hiding spot, Howie wouldn't always be able to hide with you, so you'd hear him growling and snapping and biting the person, and then getting kicked. And, like, next time you come across Howie, like, when he comes back, he's, like, limping or bleeding. Shit. And it was, like, it was so hard because you'd be terrified, and there is literally no way to kill anything after you unless it's, like, a boss battle and then you solve a puzzle to kill it. So as you're solving puzzles, too, you never know when someone's going to come across you and come after you again. The first one is this creepy mutated groundskeeper who had a doll that looked just like you, throws the doll down, and then immediately comes after you. Then you have this creepy maid. She hits her head through glass. She's like, why can't I be like you? Why doesn't Master like me? And she's like, no emotions. And she grabs like a shard of glass and she grabs it and like there's blood going down her hand and then she starts chasing you with the shard of glass. And it like goes from there. It's like each time you're being chased by someone else. And it was just like fucked up. I made my younger sister sit on the couch with me and play it at night and she got nightmares for like years. She was just like, oh, that bathroom stall part. Because I remember the first time I guess I didn't make it through the bathroom door in the downstairs bathroom in the game fast enough before hopping up on the toilet in the stall in the game.
Oh, so you
so they saw me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they saw me go into the room, and I didn't realize that, and they see him, like, open the door and drag you out. And the game over screens were pretty gruesome, because you didn't see anything, but you'd hear, like, meaty, like, slapping sounds, like someone was beating your corpse. It was, wow. Scary. One of my... I just, like, if I had to pick a scary game, that's it. It's, like, the only one I was able to get through all the way, but it was, psychologically, like, really, like, oh my god, between being upset about your dog, the heartbeat and the controller, the panic attacks, which I can relate to, I've had panic attacks, and, it just, like, totally had me wound up the entire time. Couldn't put it down, but really wanted to. Like,
so it's that whole, that fear of the unknown thing.
Yeah.
And
you could liken that to, Ripley from Aliens. Or, the protagonist from the Halloween movies. I forget her name.
Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis, exactly. Like, it's, you can liken that same character to her.
Yeah, because all the way until that point you're running.
Yeah. But she's a really strong character, but she doesn't necessarily know it.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with Alien. Ultimately, the female does find her own strength and does defeat the monster, but like with Halloween, the whole time she's running away from Michael Myers, and with Alien, the whole time she's trying to avoid this alien, but right at the end, she eventually defeats it herself. That's a little bit more apparent in Aliens,
Well, yeah, because Newt is threatened.
Yeah.
And she sees Newt as that daughter of hers that died.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's the biggest thing is, in the first movie, when she wakes up in the second one, she asks about her daughter, and they show her this, like, elderly woman. And they were like, you were away far too long.
Yeah.
And her daughter died of natural causes, so when she sees Newt, she kind of gloms onto Newt as being her daughter. And I think that, I mean, that's kind of the big, you don't fuck with my babies thing.
Yeah.
Which is,
Car?
Well, that's, that's the blowtorch with the eggs,
Yeah.
You fuck with my baby, I fuck with your baby, and she, torches it, and I think that there are characters that, I mean, for me, it is an interim, because, I can talk all day about stuff that's freaky to me now. What's weird is, like, I have a refined palate in terms of horror. There's very few things that really, really get under my skin. And I mean, I want to say I was 20 when I first played it. So I was, this is, 12 years ago. But when Fatal Frame came out on the Xbox, somebody had told me, like, you gotta play this game. You gotta play. You
Some
love
asshole.
horror. Yeah. Some guy was like, oh, you gotta play this game. This has you all over it, man, because you talk about being freaked out and da-da-da-da. And so I'm like, and I look at the box art, and the box art looks campy as shit, because it's not the PlayStation 2 Fatal Frame, it's the Xbox Fatal Frame, which has like the garish colors.
They're kind of pinkish with the girl, like, oh no.
Yeah, like, huh. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get to see titties or some shit, whatever, it's fine. And I threw this game in. There are two games that ruined me for horror games. They damaged me so much that I can no longer enjoy being freaked out. One of them is Fatal Frame. The other one is Dead Space.
Oh, yeah.
Dead Space ruined my shit. But Fatal Frame, what they did is, instead of, for those of you that haven't played it, in all seriousness, I believe, if it's not backwards compatible, I know the sequel is Fatal Frame 2 on Xbox. And if you have a 360... you can play it. It's backwards compatible.
If you
the
can
second
find
one.
It, but yeah.
What's that?
I said if you can find it.
Right. I'm lucky enough I have a copy of 2. I don't have a copy of 1, but it's a third-person Capcom horror survival game, but you get no weapons. Instead, they go by that. It's either a Navajo or a Blackfoot tradition, where taking a picture of somebody steals a part of their soul. with Fatal Frame, you had this ancient box camera, and you would have to load it up with film and take pictures of the ghosts as they were jumping at you. So the game itself was in third person, but in order to attack or to fight, you'd have to go into first person.
Yeah.
So
you couldn't see anything around you.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Because it's a box camera, so you're constantly swinging the camera, you know, the actual player camera,
I
not
can
the...
never get the aim right to get the spirits.
It's... I got to a point where I was so good, and I felt so good about myself, and I found this chick was the maiden, and she would keep finding you throughout the levels, and she'd go, "My eyes!" and she would attack you, and she was kind of the nemesis character. Like, no matter how much film you had, and how many great pictures you took, because it would rate your pictures to do the damage. No matter how great the picture was you took, she would always take a chunk out of your life. And there's one part where she pops out of a wall, she's wearing the mask, she pulls the mask off her face, and you realize that the wooden mask she was wearing has 2-inch wooden spikes on the backside of it, right where her eyes are.
Oh.
And when she pulls the mask off her face, it's this like wet slapping, like you said, with
Yeah.
Rule of Rose. That's what brought me
Haunted
back.
Ground, yeah.
Like, yeah, or Hunting Ground. Yeah, Rule of Rose is a pedophile one. But anyway, it's just this wet thunk when she pulled the spikes off her face.
Ugh.
And you're seeing that in first person and hearing it in high def.
You know, I don't know. I had not to really get like super off topic, but the thing is like those like that's gory, that's freaky, that's like, oh my eyes, right?
Mhm.
But there's also like those, speaking of like that, the sound, the meaty sound, Limbo. Limbo is like super simplistic, and it's like a side scroller, but just the sound effect of just something like the spider stabbing you, just that thunk and that like wet noise. I don't think that there's sometimes, I mean, I think with like Dead Space and Fatal Frame stuff like that, they've got that down, just that noise. If you added that to like any of the shooters or something, people would not want to shoot their opponents. Like, it's just like, oh, that's not good. Yeah, just, I remember just everything in Limbo had me terrified because I just didn't want to hear the noise.
Yeah.
The little rusty traps.
And that kind of brings us to our current masters of horror in games right now, which are pretty much Dead Space and Limbo. You know, original Dead Space, which, at least for me, and especially if you played it on the more difficult settings where you would die easily, brought you to the point where you didn't want to play it anymore.
Yeah.
Which is, it's self-defeating, you know, but for Dead Space, it's like you get to the point where you're like, I don't really want to face this necromorph right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and not play. You know, and I had someone watching me play, and they were watching it like it's a really scary movie.
Right.
They're like squealing behind you, like, do that!
Yeah, exactly, and you're just playing it,
Don't go up those stairs!
it just adds to the effect to where it's almost self-defeating to the point. You know, I think that's the pinnacle right there. You can't get much more pure than that to get a game that makes you not want to play it. It's so scary.
Well, dial it back a little bit, because Dead Space, for those of you who haven't played, and you should, it is current gen. It's probably what, a $20 game, maybe $15 game. The first Dead Space. Dead Space brought the zombie dynamic to creepy alien corridor, third person, horrible in every way. If you read the review for Resident Evil 6 on the Co-Operatives.com under our review archive, I believe that Capcom dropped the ball with Resident Evil right around Code Veronica, where they stopped being true Resident Evil games, and I think it's Visceral Entertainment that did Dead Space.
But yeah.
Visceral?
They became Visceral after they made Dead Space.
Right.
Before they were an in-house company, and that kind of EA honestly gave a chance to, which
never happens.
Well, I have to give them credit for, because Dead Space is such an amazing game. You know, it's The Thing married to Alien. which is
Yeah, I think that's
two of
really
my
good.
they're two of my most favorite sci-fi movies ever.
Well, and give it the inventory management of Resident Evil, because you had to constantly be buying rivets and like shit for your gun. Like, it wasn't kind of a balls to the wall shooter type thing. It was, you had to make sure you had enough bullets, or had enough rivets, or had enough, line gun. The line gun is the greatest fucking weapon in that game, by the way. But, but you had to make sure you had those materials handy so that you could even beat this one enemy, much less the boss.
And you were like creeping around the corner doors too. It wasn't like, yeah, I'm just gonna run over here. There's no run and gun. It's all just like, okay, I'm gonna take like 2 slow steps, look around, take a couple more steps, check my weapon.
Do you remember the announcement trailer for it with the Ishimura?
I can't.
It was one of the first surround sound trailers I ever heard. And I remember at the Co-Operatives den of debauchery, aka The Office, we have a 7.1 surround, and even with a 5.1 surround, when that trailer came out, I remember somebody going, "Oh, you gotta watch this, you gotta." And they dialed it up, put it on the TV, in our little office quarters, and I remember sitting on the little couch that we have in there, and you hear the girls singing "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star."
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
And it's and they're interspersing it with those, like, the sound that I can only attribute to David Fincher in Seven, when he shows the film being yanked off the reel, that like squealing, like electronic sound. They keep interspersing shots of the zombies with these like very serene, beautiful segments. And it's a disembodied
shots,
girl.
right?
Yeah, space shots. And the girl singing "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." But the thing that's fucked up is, if you have surround sound, she starts singing it on the left side and is going around you 360 degrees and finishes on the right side when she's singing. So the whole time you're watching it, it's like a girl's walking around you while you're watching these fucked up visuals singing "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." And that is the perfect synopsis of the game. Because the sound is perfect, the visuals are perfect. That is the closest thing to a pure horror experience. It ruined my ability to be startled. To this day, if somebody jumps out at me and goes, I got you, right? Were you tricked? Did I get you?
You're not a necromorph.
I mean, I get slightly startled, but back in the day, that whole like leap 6 feet in the air and fucking yelp like a little girl, gone. Dead Space killed that for me.
It's like it put everyone on the edge to the point where it took interactive entertainment and restricted your control just enough. With Dead Space, it was almost like you don't have that safe haven of a HUD. Mm-hmm. That was one of the most brilliant things they ever did.
Oh yeah.
The chest.
There's no pause.
Yeah. With a HUD in every other game, you feel like, this brings me back to where I'm in a video game. I'm not here. I'm not getting killed. It's fine. It's like, if you always have that HUD, you always feel like it's a video game. Just like with every other game dating back as far as you can remember, you'll have a life bar, you'll have something like that takes you out of it. With Dead Space, they took all of that away. And essentially you're controlling something that you can't really tell you're controlling unless you are. It's like with Dead Space, if you go into your inventory, it gets projected onto the screen in front of you.
And if you turn the camera around, you see it backwards.
But you're not, it's not stopped. It doesn't stop your game. Something can still creep up behind you while you're distracted looking at the pretty lights. Yeah. Fixing your inventories.
Yeah, and it completely immerses you. It's something that I've never experienced in a game before. It's like even the Holy Grail video games for me, fucking Halo, has always had that super safe HUD, and it's like, however many flood they throw at you, I still have that fucking shield bar. With Dead Space, it's like, it was all implied, it's like, you look at the power level in the back of his suit, or, you look at the stasis level in the back of his suit, and it's like, that you know, all the elements of that kind of tie together and just make one of the most creepy experiences I've ever had in my life. You know, it's like, I could watch movies all day and I'm really desensitized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when I play Dead Space, I still don't want to make it all the way through, even though I have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, I don't want to. I don't want to
take
deal with
calm
fucking
down breaks.
Exactly. I don't want to deal with necromorphs trying to slice me up every fucking 5 seconds. Fuck off. I'm trying to
let me go walk outside in the sun for like 5 minutes. I'll come back, sit down, and feel a little bit more ready to take this on. And that's awesome, and I love that about it.
Well, let me have lights. Let me have bright areas. Yeah. Just leave me the fuck alone. And they never do. It's unrelenting. You know?
Well,
it's
and with
perfect.
that in mind, I mean, we've talked about, you know, what scared us in our childhood, what scared us in the interim. What are the key to you? What are the key set pieces to a successful, to an amazing horror endeavor? And I'm gonna kind of piggyback what you just said. And number one, you restrict control. I think that's something that Capcom started out doing really well and has failed horribly in the long run. But, you know, we talked about Dead Space. You talked about Dead Space, and your life bar is on the spine of your suit. Your oxygen level is on a dial on your right shoulder. There's no HUD. It's pure immersion. This is what you are, this is what you're becoming, etc., etc. I mean, to me, as much as the visuals are there, for me, it's all about the sound, which is fucked up because I'm half deaf. So, like, you'd think that somebody, I mean, of course, I love sound in all of its mellifluous forms, but I think that sound and not even like a score, but a good sense of presence in what you're doing is important. And I think that is amazing as it is in 7.1, which is what we have here. You gotta be able to pull that off in 2.0 because not everybody has that surround sound setup. So you have to establish that connection and that drive. And to me, that's where it all starts. Because for me, it goes back to the Silent Hill, which is, you give me a place where I'm wandering around in the fog looking for my daughter, that will ruin me 10 times more than fighting aliens or shooting zombies.
Scary. Yeah, it's like you can be desensitized looks, and that's, I remember watching scary movies as a kid and just covering my ears and then being like, I'm cool as long as I don't hear the music, as long as I don't hear what's up. Like, I'm fine. I still kind of do that as an adult, but like, and sometimes even like the absence of it. Like, I keep going back to Limbo, just scaring the shit out of me. Me and my friends on the couch squealing at it. You know, is it silent? And then just every little creak you hear, you're just like, what the fuck is that? Every time you saw a branch, even if you've played that game, spider, really big thing. Every time you saw a branch even slightly move, you're like, it's a spider. It's a spider. Turn, run. No, go the other way. It's a spider. And like, you have to keep going to the right. I mean, it's a fucking 2D platformer, but it's a spider. Like, and you're just like freaked out about it. And that I think is perfect because it puts you in panic mode. And that's another one where there's no health bar. It's you are dead or you are alive. And it's just, everything's terrifying. And I love that. And there's other stuff that do that well with musical scores, which actually, the newest Alone in the Dark, not a very good game. The musical score, though, really liked that. Because that, even though there's like scripted parts where you'd fall or whatever, just the way the music would hit you, you'd be like, oh my god. I mean, I'm cool. I mean, you shitty game, your inventory sucks. Why can you live up to your music?
So remember the fucking Game Informer article about Alone in the Dark?
But it gives you the option to
that
skip.
That is such a good idea.
It gives you the option to skip
chapters?
I can skip the entire game.
The coat thing? Where you, like, looked at all the
It was such a good... I thought that was awesome, you know, open your coat. I'm
but
thinking,
then
like,
you do it,
and you
stupid.
slide, like, 5 over to the right. So I was more more frustrated than panicked. Like,
and
I thought
it makes zero sense.
No, it didn't.
It's like, oh, well, automatically I have a slot for this thing, and this thing, and this thing.
This is the best jacket ever for surviving a demonic apocalypse. Why don't we sell these jackets at Hot Topic?
Yeah.
They do well.
They do. But yeah, Bioshock 1 also, I mean, Bioshock isn't really a horror game.
But it had moments.
It had its moments, like the one...
When you see the Big Daddy for the first time.
Big Daddy for the first time, but the one that really, like, I was like, what? And it just started backing up. And it was not the baby carriage. That kind of had me freaked out. So you go down, and there's a guy, it's, what was he? It's like a plastic surgeon or whatever, and you come around this corner and you see the silhouette of him just like hitting a body.
Oh,
why can't
right.
they be perfect? And the second you hit the water, the lights go out, and you're like, I was like, no, fuck you, I don't have to go over there, do I? And it took me a while to get up the nerve to actually go through the dark to get to the other side, because I was like, someone's gonna grab me, I shit. Like,
but again, it's that appealing, that fear of the unknown thing, and I think that is 10 times more horrific when you have something that could be versus something it is. I mean, even go back to oh god, one of the Metal Gear sequels, but where you see the silhouette. There's a part where you're in a locker room and you see this guy that you know you killed. It was either in the last game or earlier on in the game. It all kind of melds in there, but you see his silhouette. And there is no question that that's that motherfucker, and he's still alive, and he still has a minigun, and you're just like, son of a bitch, and you look, and you have, like, one ration, and, like, a handful of bullets, and you're like, this isn't gonna happen. And you go around the corner, and it's a little action figure of that guy with a light behind him. Like, where, like, the light had fallen over and, like, projected it on the wall, But it's that kind of...
Those are my favorite moments in a game. It's not supposed to be scary.
Right.
But it scared the bejesus out of you anyways. And you're just like, I know I'm not supposed to be as freaked out about this as I am. Like the Bioshock light scene. I'm like, it's not supposed to be... I mean, it's supposed to be a disturbing game, yes. But I wouldn't think of it as something like, oh, it's trying to make me jump. But I was just like, fuck.
Oh, the thing that ruined my shit was with the shotgun. With the first time you get the shotgun and it's in the pool of light.
Oh,
and there's shadow all around you. And you pick up the shotgun and the light goes off.
Yep.
Fuck you, Bioshock. And I think it was Ken Levine. Fuck you, Ken Levine. You're amazing. Don't ever listen to anything I say. But that game, I mean, Bioshock was one of those, if you put me in a situation of constraint, that it's not even one of those, like you have somebody in a game where, like, you're handcuffed or, like, whatever, and you have to wiggle free or any of that. That's all bullshit. When you put me in, like, a square box and, like, show me what my dimensions are and then shut the light off, it's the psychological... To me, my greatest fear is the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Johnny?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember the part where you have all these, like, ballerina-looking figures right next to you, and you go and pick up the crossbow. And you turn it around and they're all in a different position. You know, and for me, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking horror movie this right now.
Just shoot all of them.
Yep. And I'm not fucking with you. I'm not gonna try to walk past you or anything, you know. And it's like, the brilliance of that, and even of Dead Space as well, is like, you're completely in control, and the game lets you know that, but in reality, you're not. You know, it's like Dead Space plays like any other third-person shooter. It plays exactly like Gears, if you get on the sticks and actually move the character around. But when you're actually walking through it, you feel like you're less in control than a Resident Evil game. You know, well, you can never look in the right direction.
You know what? I'm going to take umbrage with that in one way, and that's that Dead Space, the whole time that I played both of them, I played both, you know, Dead Space 1 and 2, I never felt like Dead Space was telling me I'm stupid. And I have that issue with Resident Evil. Like, when I played 6, there was a moment in 6 where, like, I can't even think of who it was, if it was Leon or fucking Jake or whatever jack-off it was. Like, either way, like, you've seen shit go down. This is not your first fucking rodeo. You've seen the dead reanimate. You've seen people grow giant lobster claws on their torso, and you've put them down. There's a part in the game where you're piloting a giant drill, and there's this big bad, you know, that's the Buffyverse thing, but the big bad, you know, the zombie, you know, total knockoff Nemesis. This guy is like the Korean. He's the guy when you go to the swap meet, and you know you see that like Mexican table that has all the like the tamarindo and the sweet candy and all that shit, and then they have their action figure wall, and it's like Captain Planet, Mr. T, and Spider-Man, and it says like Avengers above it, like it's like the shitty knockoff action figures. That's what this enemy is in Resident 6. And you see this guy, and he's a Nemesis ripoff. Like, he's... If the Nemesis was a WWE wrestler, is essentially what it is.
That's so good.
No, but that's exactly what it is. And you look at it, and you're just like, this is atrocious. And then you get to a point where he's fighting you, and you're driving a giant drill that if you know anything about how, like, ordnance or how any of these things work, like, a giant drill will probably move at, like, 4 miles an hour. Because, like, it's one of those, it's steady, and it requires constant, but, you know, it's Resident Evil. There's zombies popping up and shit. So we're gonna go ahead and suspend belief for a moment. This motherfucker keeps coming on you, not literally coming on you, because that would be disgusting, but, like, he keeps coming towards you, and you're in the drill, you're cycling down the drill at him, and you smash him through a wall, and you're drilling him in the chest, and you smash him through another wall, and you drill him through the chest, and he's pushing the drill back, and you're driving it forward, I guess. I don't know. I'm assuming your pedal is to the proverbial metal, but you're still doing it, and you're jamming it into his chest, and you're knocking him through a wall, and then it gets to the end, and the drill goes, and the blood goes, and the guy goes, and falls down. And then Leon goes, or Jake, or like I said, whatever jackoff it was, Chris Wedfield, he's like, well, I'm glad that's over. And they jump out of the thing, and I'm like, bitch, you've seen zombies pop up. Like, you've seen you shoot a guy down and, like, tentacles and shit slap out of his arm. Let's give him a double tap in his face. Here's another idea. The drill still has juice. Let's drill him in half. Like, let's run him through it till he's just sliced and gored into little bloody bitty chunks.
And I think that just being a character when you're playing a game where you're like, yeah, I've seen all this before, it makes it so hard to be scared. And I think that's where Resident Evil kind of fails. It's like, yeah, okay, I expect this. Point. I expect this to happen, and you're no longer that vulnerable green agent in like a scary mansion in the woods that's like, oh my god, what could possibly go wrong here? It's, yeah, I already fucking know. So, and that's the difference with Dead Space. You're not playing an operative. You're playing some guy who came to repair
like
the goddamn
communication.
communication. Yeah, you're the maintenance guy. You know, haunting around. You're some girl got in a car accident. You know, don't know what the fuck's going on. BioShock. You got in a plane crash. Now you're in this weird, creepy underwater bubble. Like, and those characters are the ones where you're going to be more scared. I don't think it's easy to be scared in a game where you know that you're banned. Like, yeah, alright, well, fuck you, got an RPG.
Look at, like,
right?
Silent... what was the Silent Hill game where, like, the guy was, like... Yeah, was it Homecoming?
Yeah, it was
where
Homecoming,
he's, like...
where you're like, well, I mean...
Like a badass?
It's an okay game. It's just that, what the fuck do I have to be scared of? I can shoot you in the fucking face. Like...
Right.
Give me a gun, all of a sudden everything is so much less scary. Especially give me a gun where I'm able to actually kill you with it. I mean, it's one thing if it's like necromorphs where you happen to lop off limbs to kill it, but if a headshot kills it, then that's not scary.
Well, it's like, you know, with BioShock, no one really considers that a survival horror, but it really is.
Yeah, truly.
You know, you start out, and you're completely limited by fire, which is, you know, caveman. You know, you start out, you can't go anywhere that there's not fire. Who doesn't remember that scene at the very beginning of BioShock?
With the water.
Where you're in water swimming, and every section you go to that you're not supposed to go to is surrounded by fire.
Right.
You know, so you're basically forced into the...
So you're Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like, it's where it's...
Yeah, and you're forced
you're going
into
in
the
that
entrance of
elevator whether
Rapture.
you like it or not. Yeah.
So, to rein it in, I think we've touched on very specific and very I think we've had actually a very great less bullshit filled session than ever before. So I'm gonna go ahead, instead of saying like a closing statement, let's go ahead. I'm gonna say 2 games that it's Dead Space and it's Silent Hill. You know, if you're, like I said, if you're a greenhorn, a youngin', you're gonna look at Silent Hill and think it's a giant shit pile. But if you suspend belief just a little bit and deal with the graphics that are there, I think you'll find a lot to love. Domo?
Haunting Ground and Limbo. Just absolutely. So both games were just, yeah, it doesn't have to be super jumpy to have you terrified all the time.
Jonathan?
Something that we didn't even mention, Condemned.
Oh, yeah. Condemned.
Yeah.
And,
Condemned 2 especially.
Yeah, and Dead Space. You know, I feel like Dead Space is worth mentioning again because they really do get horror. They
100%.
truly do. You know, and it transcends genre. You know, even like film, you'll think of sci-fi horror and traditional horror. Dead Space pretty much grasps all of them. So, Dead Space and Condemned for me, because Condemned is, you know, you have to play it tough.
So there you go. It's clearly, if you look at our ages, it is a spectrum. You have the old guy picking one of the newest and one of the older. You have the median lady picking
PS2 and 360.
PS2
It's not
and
too bad,
360.
yeah.
And then you got Johnny Thin with the double 360s.
Yeah, double 360, bro.
Yeah. So, in the meantime, try to stay away from razor blades in your delightful caramel candies. Try to answer the door with clothes on, you dirty, dirty savages. Dama, you have anything to add?
Scare the shit out of kids.
Yeah,
Scare
kids
them.
are
They
awful.
need it. They really do. Take advantage of this time to pop out of your door screaming like a monkey and throw the candy at them.
Take advantage
Even
of
better,
children.
throw dental floss at them. Those bitches don't deserve shit. Eat the candy,
toothbrushes.
give them toothbrushes and dental floss.
That's right.
Ugh.
Johnny?
Don't over desensitize them because they get a long time to be scared. You know.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be like look at a game like Dead Space, which clearly all of us cherish, and be like, it's fucking stupid.
That's gonna be awful because I'm gonna beat my kid when he's like, yeah, that's stupid. I'm just gonna be like, you don't get to eat for a week. Like you want to know what horror is? I'm gonna treat you like a goddamn Somalian.
Yeah.
Back in my day, this was a scary game.
Yeah, it's not scary at all.
We didn't need a hollow deck to get scared.
So, that being said, I hope you guys have a very safe and enjoyable Halloween. One more time, this is Mick Shear. This is the lovely zombie unicorn, Miss Dama.
Yes.
And Johnny Thin, back in the saddle. Again.
Just like that.
Half
band
listing
that I
off
hate.
the saddle, whatever.
So,
Exactly like that band that I hate. So go ahead.
So here we go. As always, at the end of the day, don't be a dick and don't die. Good night.